and good evening, and welcome to Class 5 Stories from the Shed. Welcome to Class 3, 4 and 5. We're all ready to read Chapter 2 of Roald Dahl's Danny, the Champion of the World. First of all, though, let's say hello to our regulars over here. We've got Evening Rebel. Oh, he sounds a bit throaty, that. And we've got Danny and his dad, both with their spanners there. Now, doesn't Danny look like his dad? Okay. Now, at the end of last episode, we had a mysterious new visitor that's arrived. We've got a pheasant, and I've made him a bit of a roost. Here so that he can perch upon it. Now, I did ask you for any pictures, and I did ask one certain person in school to give me a name. And Bethany has come up. She's done us a lovely picture. She's decided to call him Pesco. I think he's Italian. He must be a very rare Italian breed of pheasant. And he's Pesco the pheasant. So I'm going to put this up just on the gallery up here. There you are. Okay, welcome, Pesco. Ciao, Pesco, Italian pheasant that you are. Okay, I'll put that there. And let's get on with our story. Now, we found out last time all about Danny, how his mother had died when he was very young. He lived just with his dad in a gypsy caravan. His dad ran a garage and a filling station, and they had what sounded like a lovely kind of quiet, nice life in the country. And today we're going to find out a bit more about Danny's dad and why he is so fantastic. Chapter 2, The Big Friendly Giant. My father was, without the slightest doubt, was the most marvellous and exciting father any boy ever had. Here is a picture of him. You might think, if you didn't know him well, that he was a stern and serious man. But he wasn't. He was actually a wildly funny person. What made him appear so serious was the fact he never smiled with his mouth. He did it all with his eyes. He had brilliant blue eyes, and when he thought of something funny, his eyes would flash, and if you looked carefully, you could actually see a tiny little golden spark dancing in the middle of each eye. But the mouth never moved. I was glad my father was an eye smiler. It meant he never gave me a fake smile, because it's impossible to make your eyes twinkle if you aren't feeling twinkly yourself. A mouth smile is different. You can fake a mouth smile anytime you want, simply by moving your lips. I've also learned that a real mouth smile always has an eye smile to go with it. So watch out, I say. When someone smiles at you with his mouth, but the eyes stay the same, it's sure to be bogus. That's very true, children. When you know somebody's eyes are twinkling, you know they're all right. My father was not what you would call an educated man, and I doubt if he'd read 20 books in his life, but he was a marvellous storyteller. He used to make up a bedtime story for me every single night, and the best ones were turned into serials and went on for many nights running. One of them, which must have gone on for at least 50 nights, was about an enormous fellow called the Big Friendly Giant, or BFG for short. The BFG was 3 times as tall as an ordinary man, and his hands were as big as wheelbarrows. He sounds a bit like Mr. Shoutout, doesn't he? Mr. Shoutout's pretty big. Maybe they're related. So I'm sure you've all heard of the Big Friendly Giant before. Let's just get a picture of him. You've all heard of him before. I'm sure you know him through this picture here. Okay, the BFG. And so it turns out it's Danny's dad was the person who invented him. Right. BFG lived in a vast underground cavern not far from our filling station. Oh, so he lived near Danny. And he only came out to the oven when it was dark. Inside the cavern he had a powder factory where he made more than 100 different kinds of magic powder. Occasionally, as he told stories, my father would stride up and down, waving his arms and waggling his fingers. But mostly he would sit close to me on the edge of my bunk and speak very softly. Here's a picture of him. There he is. There's Danny's dad next to him. Okay. So here we go. The big friendly giant makes his magic powders out of the dreams that children dream when they're asleep, he said. How? I asked. Tell me how, Dad. Dreams, my love, are very mysterious things. They float around in the night air like little clouds, searching for sleeping people. Can you see 'em? I asked. Nobody can see 'em. Then how does the big friendly giant catch them? Ah, my father said. That's the interesting part. A dream, you see, as it goes drifting through the night air, makes a tiny little buzzing, humming sound. A sound so soft and low, it's impossible for ordinary people to hear it. But the BFG... I think the BFG must be listening. The BFG can hear it easily. His sense of hearing is absolutely fantastic. I loved the far intent look on my father's face when he was telling a story. His face was pale and still and distant, unconscious of everything around him. The BFG, he said, can hear the tread of a ladybird's footsteps as she walks across a leaf. He can hear the whispering of ants as they scurry around in the soil talking to one another. He can hear the sudden shrill cry of pain a tree gives out when a woodman cuts in it with an axe. Ah, yes, me darling, there's a whole world of sound around us that we cannot hear because our ears are simply not sensitive enough. Well, what happens when he catches the dreams? I asked. He imprisons them in glass bottles and screws the tops down tight, my father said. He has thousands of these bottles in his cave. Does he catch the bad dreams as well as the good ones? Yes, my father said. He catches both, but he only uses the good ones in his powders. What does he do with the bad ones? He explodes them. It was impossible to tell you how much I loved my father. When he was sitting close to me on the bunk, I would reach out and slide my hand into his, and then he would fold his long fingers around my fist, holding it tight. What does the BFG do with his powders after he's made them? I asked. In the dead of night, my father said, he goes prowling through the villages, searching for houses where children are asleep. Because of his great height, he can reach windows that are 1 or even 2 flights up, and when he finds a room with a sleeping child, he opens his suitcase. There he is, the BFG. His suitcase, I said. BFG always carries a suitcase and a blowpipe, my father said. The blowpipe is as long as a lamppost. The suitcase is for the powders. So he opens the suitcase and selects exactly the right powder, and he puts it in the blowpipe, and he slides the blowpipe in through the open window, and then